Welcome to our session today. I'm Christine from the German Accelerator in Latin America, here from our Buenos Aires office. And I'm very, very happy to have Max Zeumer, the Chief Commercial Officer of Flix, here with me today. A German unicorn, a success story that grew out of Munich across Europe into the US, acquiring Greyhound, and now looking into Latin America. And that's what we're here for today, to look into the expansion plans of a German unicorn across LatAm. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Max. If you
Thanks a
want
lot
to
for having me.
make a quick introduction, sorry, we get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So I'm Max. I started at Flix 10 years ago. Have been building the international markets ever since. And it's been super exciting. I mean, first as you said, we moved from being a German startup to being a European startup. So in the first step up until 2019, we focused a lot on Europe. And then ventured off to the US, which was great, and I mean very exciting to have this iconic Greyhound brand integrated. Which I mean, when you start in this industry, I mean Greyhound is the name out there, so that was a super exciting step. And as you said, I mean most recently we expanded into Latin America, which is fantastic. I mean, really great experience for me personally, and also obviously super exciting markets that are out there.
Amazing. And what was your first trip to LatAm? Like when and where? I remember my first trip was 4 years ago by now to Argentina, and I fell in love with the region. And ever since, always try to find a way to get engaged here, be part of the local startup scene. And what was your fondest memory of your first trip to LatAm?
It was actually not that long ago. It was 2023. I went to Brazil at the time and Chile, and it's been impressive. I mean, obviously, I focused a lot on my industry, looked at a lot of bus terminals, a lot of buses, and that's super impressive. I mean, it's a large industry. You have a lot of great infrastructure. The bus terminal in Sao Paulo is gigantic. It looks a little bit like an airport. Has 80 departure bays. So it's a very different scale from what we know in Europe. So that's been great. And also the bus product you see out there is fantastic. I mean, you have very great quality buses. You have luxury buses that recline a lot more than what we have here in Europe. So I mean, it's been great to see what the industry or what the state of the industry is. And I mean, I got to travel a little bit. Unfortunately, not as much as I would have loved, but I got to see a little bit of the countries in Brazil and Chile, and I mean, it's really beautiful. It's I mean, fantastic. The variety, but yeah, I was very impressed by what I saw during those trips.
I can imagine. I mean, Brazil, I think 24 times as big as Germany. I think we can't
Yeah.
even imagine that scale and what you can do there. I think you're covering around 100 cities or even probably more by now. My research might not be accurate anymore. But I think that scale is something we're extremely excited about, that startups from Germany or from around the world don't even know, I think, what all the possibilities are here locally. And I'm super happy to dive a bit deeper into that. I think my question would be a bit, how did you decide on Brazil and Chile? Brazil is a ginormous market, also Portuguese speaking, not always easy. And then, of course, Chile is a smaller market, very south. How did you decide on these two markets as your first step in LatAm?
So for us, when we look at markets, it's always kind of there are many factors, but the two main ones we look at are how big is the market,
Hmm.
and what's the regulation? Like,
Yeah.
can we apply our model in those markets? And Brazil was our first step into Latin America because there was an ongoing liberalization process. So it was a different model before where you had different concessions for lines, and so the supply on a line was limited. And that was in the process of being changed, and that's why we wanted to be part of that and basically have our foot on the ground while we were there. And Chile just scores extremely high on kind of on what you wish for in a market. It has a kind of a strong regulatory system. It's big enough. It's actually, I mean, it's a very long country, but a lot of the activity is actually in more the middle part of the country. So you don't have to go all the way from like all far north to
Yeah.
down south. For us, I mean, right now we're centered around Santiago, and now
Mhm.
we're kind of gradually going further north and further south from there. So Chile is really the poster child of a market for us in terms of regulation, market size, density of the population. So it's a great market.
Amazing. And you also launched, I think I was part of a session with the president of Chile and your CEO back in Munich, actually last year, where he presented that you're launching one of your first electric buses, I believe, in LatAm that was launched in Chile. Can you share a bit more about that, what sustainability means in your business? Because I think we see the green buses, we see your green jacket. I'm sorry, I couldn't find the green shirt, but but I think that's of course very, very important in your business. Can you share a bit more about that part also?
Yeah, I mean, mass transportation and I mean putting up to 50 or 80 people in one bus is, I mean, it's kind of in itself already environmentally friendly. But we don't want to stop there. We love the vision of going as green as possible. So we're constantly looking at alternative drives, and we have a very open approach. I mean, we look at local ecosystems and what's possible, I mean, what's pushed politically in different markets, what alternative drives are available, and particularly what charging infrastructures are available. And I mean, we do tests all across the globe. In Chile, as you said, we did battery electric. We also do alternative biofuels, biogas. We're really very open there. And we see good momentum. Um, and for me, it's very, I'm going to a different part of the world now, but one
Yeah.
thing is really impressive. In India, we see that the kind of this initial chicken and egg problem has been overcome. So there were subsidies that pushed battery electric, and there was a very clear commitment from the government for battery electric. And what you see now, a couple of years in, is that a super strong ecosystem has developed. So
Yeah.
you have local OEMs producing local India manufactured battery electric buses. You have a lot of players investing into the infrastructure so you can charge. And that brought the whole thing to a point where for us in India today, it's actually comparable to drive a diesel bus to driving an electric bus in terms of cost, which is something we don't see in the rest of the world.
Mhm.
And for me, it's a fantastic example of how it can be done. And I think that's also, I mean, the issue is the same in Latin America that you have in India, that you just have very densely populated cities
Yeah.
and a lot of pollution from cars. So that I think it just shows that there is a way, and I'm very excited also in Chile, for example, that there's a lot of political will to drive this, and it's great to see that it's possible. It just takes one or two more steps to get to this ecosystem where then it really is the drive of the future.
Amazing. And next up is a big giant, Mexico and also Peru. I read that you're launching across LatAm now. And of course, when we look into Chile, it's a comparatively smaller market. When you look into Brazil and Mexico, how are you going to approach the next big giant, Mexico? And what was your decision making around that part?
Yeah, I mean it's basically that. It's just a giant market.
Hmm.
It's a market that you kind of when you're in our business you cannot ignore. So it's very exciting, and it's been great to be there on the ground to see what the bus industry is like. And the bus terminals that we visited are even bigger than the ones in Brazil.
Yeah.
So very impressive. And it's also one of those countries where you don't have relevant train infrastructure. So a lot of it is bus transportation on the intercity piece. So we're very excited. We're getting ready to launch, and it's always that time just before launch that's the most exciting when you're piecing everything together and preparing for the big day. But yeah, very much looking forward to making our first steps into Mexico.
Amazing. And are you always building a local team, or how are you approaching that part?
Yeah, I think that's a critical part of the success. I mean, we do a lot of desk research before we enter a market, but ultimately you don't like from a distance you don't get it right. We always hire two key people in the beginning. One is an analyst that helps us with, you know, all the on the ground research, and then the next kind of the next big hire is a local managing director that then builds the team and drives everything. But you need the local knowledge and you need somebody on the ground that, you know, understands everything and just has has this local visibility. Otherwise, it's not possible to be successful.
Exactly. Exactly. And hopefully also gives you some of the local experience so that you see a bit more of Latin America. I really hope for that.
Yeah.
There's so much to explore here. Now, if we look into other German startups that, of course, look up to you as a success from Munich to the world, what are your few pieces of advice for German founders looking into Latin America? Because we would love to see many more German founders here. We think there's huge opportunities from climate tech, renewable energies, everything across AI. The adoption rate is ginormous in the market. Are there some pieces of advice? Also, of course, challenges that they might need to be aware of that you could give to your fellow German founders?
Yeah. I mean, for us, it's just, you know, the opportunity itself was gigantic. It's out of the global market of around about 70 billion. The Latin American market is 18 billion. So I mean, it's just huge. And I would imagine that that's the same for many industries that,
Yes.
you know, the opportunity is just too big to be overlooked.
Hmm.
And then one thing that as a German, sometimes you know you look at Latin America and you kind of have this image that it's fairly similar, but it's really not. I mean, it's very different.
Yes.
It's very different markets. It's similar like in Europe, like every country is very different. And you have to embrace that and really like pick the markets, understand the local specifics, and really tailor your business model and your go-to-market strategy to those markets. I think that's super important. And I mean, as discussed before, our key to that is always to build a local team and to really make sure that you get the local specifics and fine-tune everything to get the product right and have that product market fit that you want to have.
Perfect. Amazing. So I love what you said. It's too big, too good to be overlooked. 100% agree. And I think or hope that a lot more founders will join you along that journey in LatAm because I think definitely I agree. There's a lot to be done. I think once you're here, you fall in love with the region, with the opportunities, and definitely should be here. And I hope you'll come to Argentina one day too, so that we have you here locally as well. And I hope we see many, many more green buses across the region here. We're super proud of that and very, very happy to have you here with us. Thank you so, so much for your time to be with us today.
Thanks a lot for having me, and I also hope that we see a lot more green buses across the Latin American continent.